War impacts on Asian nations. The war you cannot see. When war begins, maps do not bleed. Cities do not all burn at once. Skies are not filled with fire everywhere. Most people wake up, go to work, cook food, and try to live normally. But something changes. Something silent, slow, and far more dangerous. The lifeline of billions begins to choke. This is not a war of bombs alone. This is a war that enters kitchens, farms, and small shops, without warning. The invisible artery. Far from most Asian homes lies a narrow stretch of water, the Strait of Hormuz. It looks small on the map. Quiet. Empty. But it carries life. Every day, ships move through it carrying oil, gas, and fuel, the energy that powers Asia. Nearly 80 to 84% of Asia's oil and 83% of its liquefied natural gas pass through this single route. In March-April 2026, as conflict between the US-Israel coalition and Iran intensified, this passage did not fully close, but it tightened. And that was enough. Because when the artery tightens, the body begins to suffer. What followed was not just war. It was a silent crisis. A new kind of war. By April 14, 2026, the war had already moved beyond soldiers. It entered homes. It entered transport systems. It entered factories and food supply chains. Even with a fragile ceasefire, the damage was already done. The strait remained restricted. Supply stayed uncertain. Asia began adjusting to a new normal. Fuel becoming expensive. Food becoming harder to afford. Jobs becoming uncertain. When oil prices rise, everything rises. Transport becomes costly. Electricity becomes expensive. Food prices climb. Businesses struggle. And slowly, hope becomes expensive too. The United Nations warned that millions in Asia-Pacific are at risk of falling into poverty, not because bombs hit them, but because prices did. See. Country-by-country impact. India. The LPG shock. India depends heavily on imported energy. Around 85% of its oil and a large share of gas comes from abroad, much of it through the Gulf. When supply tightened, prices rose fast. The biggest shock came through LPG, used in homes and small businesses. Cylinder prices jumped sharply. Deliveries became irregular. Long queues formed in many areas. But the deeper impact was on small businesses. Street food stalls. Small hotels and restaurants. Bakeries and sweet shops. Small manufacturing units. These businesses survive on thin margins. Even a small increase in fuel cost can destroy them. Thousands slowed down or shut completely. This caused job losses, especially among daily workers, cooks, helpers, delivery staff. With fewer jobs in cities, many workers started returning to villages. A silent migration began. At the same time, oil imports became more expensive. The currency weakened. Inflation began rising. For India, this is not just a fuel problem. It is a livelihood crisis. Pakistan. Economic pressure rising. Pakistan depends heavily on imported oil but has limited financial reserves. As prices rose, the country struggled to secure affordable fuel. It began looking for alternative routes and suppliers, including shipments through Saudi Arabia's Red Sea ports. Still, fuel became expensive. This caused higher transport costs, rising food prices, increased electricity costs. Supply chains slowed. Daily life became harder. The government faced pressure to provide subsidies, increasing financial stress. At the same time, public frustration grew due to rising living costs. Pakistan's challenge is simple but severe. Not enough energy, and not enough money to buy it. South Korea. Industrial risk. South Korea is a major industrial economy but depends heavily on imported energy. The crisis has caused reduced refinery output, pressure on manufacturing industries, currency weakness. The country has reserves, but they are not unlimited. If disruption continues, exports could fall. And for South Korea, exports are everything. Bangladesh. Slowdown begins. Bangladesh is facing rising costs across sectors. Transport, manufacturing, electricity. To manage demand, the government reduced working hours. Economic activity is slowing. Exports may also suffer if industries cannot sustain higher costs. Cambodia. Farmers under pressure. Cambodia is feeling the impact through agriculture. Fertilizer prices have increased sharply. Many farmers cannot afford to plant crops. This leads to lower production, rising food prices, reduced rural income. Since agriculture is the main livelihood, this creates deep economic stress. Sri Lanka. Fragile and exposed. Sri Lanka is already economically weak. So when fuel prices rise globally, it feels the impact faster and harder. The government introduced fuel rationing, reduced work schedules, limited usage policies. Electricity costs increased. Transport became expensive. The country also searched for alternative suppliers to reduce dependence. But with limited reserves, Sri Lanka cannot absorb long-term shocks. This crisis risks pushing it back into deeper instability. Philippines. Near total dependence. The Philippines imports nearly all its oil. So when supply is disrupted, the impact is immediate. The government declared a national energy emergency. Steps included reducing fuel taxes, using emergency funds, promoting remote work and energy saving. Public transport was badly affected. Daily commuting became difficult. Even though temporary supply was secured, the country remains vulnerable. Because it has one major weakness. No strong domestic energy source. Vietnam. Industry slowing down. Vietnam has limited energy reserves. When supply is disrupted, factories slow down. The country is facing reduced industrial output, higher manufacturing costs, fertilizer shortages affecting agriculture. However, there is one small opportunity. Some global companies are shifting production to Vietnam. Still, the immediate reality is difficult. Energy shortage equals production slowdown. Final regional conclusion. Asia depends heavily on external energy. Around 60% of its oil comes from the Middle East. A major portion passes through the Strait of Hormuz. When that route is disrupted, the impact spreads everywhere. Across Asia, the same pattern appears. Energy dependency, economic stress, social impact. The effects include rising inflation, currency depreciation, industrial slowdown, job losses. But the most important truth is this. This war is not only fought on battlefields. It is fought in kitchens, in farms, in small shops. It is fought in the daily struggle of ordinary people trying to survive rising costs. No explosions. No headlines. Just a slow, silent squeeze on billions of lives. And that is what makes it the most dangerous kind of war.